G'day there folks, it's Connor here again, coming at you with some more Reddit stories. Let me know if you guys are enjoying these videos with a like and a comment down below, but without further ado, let's read some Reddit. My husband of 7 years is really angry that I refuse to quit my job to become a stay-at-home wife, not sure what to do. Hi everyone. Not really familiar with Reddit and having an account, but saw this as an online forum for relationship advice and could use some input. I love my husband, and he's an amazing man, but we have flaws like everyone else. We both aged out of foster care and met at a youth fulfillment program, basically a work camp that helps kids with no families learn the fundamentals for living, finances, certificates as needed. We were both 18 and stayed in contact after the program ended. He made it clear he liked me, but I was truly petrified of men at that point in my life due to past experiences and rejected him a bit harshly. I reached out to apologize and we became friends. Then a year or two later, I saw he posted on Snapchat that he was in my area. I asked if he would want to go on a date so I could practice being comfortable around guys, and he agreed. He never made a move, never touched me, never made weird eye contact. If I said no, he didn't ask a second time, not even as a suggestion. We went on these platonic dates for months and months with nothing happening, and one day I asked for a hug and then asked for a kiss, and he asked me to be his girlfriend. We got married a year after, and our 7-year anniversary is around the corner. We agreed we would not even think about having kids until we were older, since both of us were the product of young parents. We've really just only focused on getting by, on using as little money as possible, and saving up every dime to buy a house. Thankfully, we got our house a few months ago, and we were both able to quit our second jobs, and for the first time, only work regular 9-to-5s. Yay! I've discovered I really like gardening and baking, and I love having a real home. We have been discussing adding to our family by having a baby, and I feel very ready to be a mum. Scared still, yes, but ready. But my husband brought up how sad I would be if I had to quit since I've worked so hard. I told him I had zero plans to quit. I would only take maternity leave. Plus my company allows maternal and paternal remote options for 1 year after birth, so I can just work from home if needed. I know it's a lot to do with a newborn, but giving up the security of my paycheck is simply not an option. He told me this was what we worked for, to make our own perfect family opposite from what ours were like, and I was blindsiding him by changing my plans, and I told him no plan has changed. I can have a career and be a mum. Plenty of women do it. He doesn't have to quit his job to be a dad, so why should I? He said it wouldn't work for a baby's needs, and I told him, okay, since I make more money than you, why don't you quit, and I go back to work remotely after healing from birth. That way we have both hands on deck, and we don't have a severe loss of income, as I make $89K a year, and he makes $52K a year. He mentioned that if I trusted him fully, this shouldn't be a problem. I told him I trust him, but I don't trust our current economy. But I left out that I really do genuinely think quitting my job with no savings, wiped out by getting the house, and relying on a man is absolutely stupid. He had plans made previously with his parents and had to leave, so he said we would pick the conversation back up when he gets home, but he's very, very upset. Madder than I've ever seen him, and I don't understand why he just assumed I would quit. Not only do I not understand it, but it makes me trust him a lot less than I did yesterday. I have a bad habit of running for the hills when problems come up, and not gonna lie, this is making me really nervous. Thank you for reading all of this if you have. I'm open ears to what could be going through his mind or why he's thinking like this. Really just doesn't seem logical to me. He's been watching all of these videos of stay-at-home wives and girlfriends, and I feel like this is influencing him a lot. Okay, let's go to the comments. Please hold off on having kids until this is resolved. $52K isn't a lot for a family of 3, especially with a mortgage and baby expenses. He isn't seeing the whole picture here. He's stuck in a mode of this is how things are supposed to work. Since it's not the 1950s, however, and the world has moved on, that is not the only way it can work. You can both work full-time and have childcare support. You can both work part-time. One of you can work and one of you can stay home, as long as the finances work. I think you are smart not to want to give up your paid career, especially given your background. I'm assuming you have no other family support. I would not want to be entirely reliant on a man either, because I could not tolerate that kind of insecurity. I need to know that I can support myself if worse comes to worst. The relationship breaks up or he dies or whatever happens. And when you make 30k a year more than he does, it would make no financial sense for you to give up your job and for him to keep working. But because he's stuck in "this is how things should work" that is modelled on an outdated patriarchal model, he thinks it's the man's job to earn the money and the woman's job to stay home, even though that model makes no sense anymore for a lot of couples, and definitely doesn't for you. Looking after the kids is not your job alone, it is both of your jobs as the parents. How you split that up between you is up to you two. It's not on you alone, and kids can be perfectly fine with two working parents. My mum stayed home for part of my childhood and worked for part of it, and honestly I was better off when she worked. She was happier, so I was happier, and I got to go hang out with a bunch of friends at daycare instead of sitting alone at home with my mum every day. Win-win. So this is just my opinion. I think his childhood and upbringing trauma is playing into this a lot. This doesn't sound like a situation where he wants to control you like in some posts, but more like a situation where he has idealised what a perfect family might look like, and so he wants to give his children that. You two need to go to couples counselling for a while. Figure it out with a therapist to help intercede and help him understand. Financial security is important. Hold off getting pregnant until you guys have been in couples therapy for 6 months or so, and have begun working towards some common ground. As for him going off to meet his parents, is it possible having them back in your lives is contributing to this need for a picture-perfect family? Just curious. OP replied, "Thank you for this comment. I've been thinking on it for most of the day now. The parents he went to see are foster parents, but there were some legal issues going on and they had to release guardianship. He lived with them from 10 to 15 until ending up back at a group home and aging out, but they always stayed in contact and he considers them as parents. But they never lost contact, so I'm not sure that would be it. But he didn't start seeing them in person again until 2 to 3 years ago. I've never thought he was controlling, but we have talked in the past about this type of thing, and I've always told him I would never want to be a stay-at-home mum. Maybe, at most, until they're in elementary if he was making a lot more money. But we're not at the income level and networking level where I can get away with having 5-year gaps in my employment. Neither of us have attempted therapy again, and most of our experiences were less than pleasant with DHR and child services counsellors, so I'll see if he's open to the idea." Okay, on to an update. It's been a few days since he came home and told me he met a girl at work and she's a better woman than me, and that she has a son already and will be a stay-at-home wife or girlfriend or whatever the frick. He gets his happy ending, I guess. He texted me right before I got off work and asked me to pick up food from one of our usual date night spots. I got home and noticed his car had boxes in it and a woman I didn't know. I tried opening the door, but it was locked and she just looked at me. What little was left of our savings, he took, and both of our cats. I didn't see this coming at all. I haven't told any of my friends yet. His adoptive parents have been dropping me off food that I can't even force myself to eat. I haven't cried yet. I'm kind of still in shock. I wish I had a family to run to, but for now the internet has to do. I haven't answered any of his calls or texts. He keeps trying to check in, ask if I'm okay. How the frick would I be okay? I never thought he would cheat. I asked him to promise if there was ever someone else, he would just tell me as soon as he knew, but they've been together at least 6 months. So while he was calling me selfish for not wanting to put in my 2 weeks and be a stay-at-home wife, he was dating her the entire time, planning a future with her the entire time. I feel stupid. I should have taken everyone's advice more literally. When I asked him to go to therapy, he wouldn't. His parents think he's had some type of mental break. I should have stayed afraid of him and avoided him. I should have chosen a better outcome for myself. I just feel like the same girl that no one wants to love anymore, all over again. I know what he did isn't my fault. I know I could never stop him. And really, do I want a man who doesn't want me? Never. But that just doesn't stop it from hurting. Now for some more comments. He wanted you to be reliant on him and didn't want you to be smart enough to find out his affair. See if you can dig more info about AP. Go nuclear on them both. You are still young. You can find a new love. OP replies, "Once I found out she was 20, I stopped caring. Their karma will come one day on its own. I doubt I would be able to stop myself from having to do hard time in prison if I ever see them again." Let's be real, she grabbed onto him with her kid, and he'll leave her just as fast as he left OP when he realises he doesn't actually want what he thinks he wants. Mostly because he'll realise it's not what he thinks, or it's way too hard for him to do. OP replied, his mum, adoptive, called me and is already coordinating for dropping the cats back off to me. He didn't know his new girlfriend is allergic. At least I get a little laugh already, lol. If he didn't even know that, imagine what other surprises he's going to discover. What did he do? Just grab the first woman who would agree with his idea of what a relationship looks like and say, she'll do? Okay, now for the final update. Really want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart to all of the people who reached out to me with well wishes, especially other spouses who experienced similar. It helped so much more than you could ever know. There has been a few things that have happened, and honestly I'm exhausted in every way possible, so the input from folks has really been useful in organising my thoughts and keeping an open mind. I couldn't help it, but for days I compared us and wondered what the frick he could have been thinking until I realised she's a carbon copy of his biological mother, or at least the stories he heard about her since she died when he was 5. I hate that I feel bad for him still, even after what he's done, but we offered him support for his thoughts. We urged him to go to therapy. I even offered to pay for it myself, and he was too prideful. I lost both of my parents too, at an older age with even more core memories with them, so it wasn't a boat he was in alone, but he chose to act like it was and wallow in self-pity. He called me on our 7-year wedding anniversary, minutes after midnight, whispering apologies and saying he feels so guilty. I asked for what, and he just said, well, you know, what we're going through. I told him, no, it's what you're doing. We are going through nothing. I was abandoned by my husband, exposed to God knows what, while you were banging her and coming back home to me. We were still having sex like every single day, so I made sure he knew just how disgusting I thought he was. Then he got ticked and told me he only started cheating because I couldn't follow his lead. Sir, look where you led yourself. Our entire marriage I've pushed him career-wise. Heck, the job he has right now, I applied to on his behalf. Meanwhile, I'm pretty sure he doesn't or didn't even know what my full job title is. I pushed him to reach out to the adoptive parents when he started getting family obsessed, but neither of us were ready for a kid. He went on about how I broke my promise first when I decided I didn't want to be a real mum by not quitting, that I was turning his adoptive parents against him because they're refusing to meet his new girlfriend. He blamed me again and then had the nerve to say that this could all be put on pause if I can learn how to make decisions that benefit a family and not myself. I asked point blank if he was insinuating that we could get back together if I quit my job. He told me yes, I will always love you, but you make things more difficult than needed. I hung up and blocked him on everything, spent the rest of the night hugging wine in the bathtub and wondering what the hell kind of person I'd been sharing my heart with. The next day he went public with their relationship, posting a photo to Instagram, and most of our mutual friends reached out, with my closest friends commenting less than kind things on the photo. As it turns out, he and his new girlfriend have been together for 7, almost 8 months. She is 20, her son is around 2. I reached out to her ex, the father of her son, who she had left to be with my ex-husband. She moved out in the middle of the day and took their kid, so he was just as blindsided, if not more than I was. We met up and went for a walk, stopped by a bar, literally cried, laughed, hugged each other, sang songs way too loudly, and sobbed in public like a lunatic, but it helped so much. We also made sure to exchange evidence for any court battles. I'm a little iffy towards him for now considering that they had quite the age gap. She was 17 when they met, and he was 26. He said she lied about her age, and they met at a college party, and then next thing he knew, she was pregnant. He gave her money for an abortion, but she came back with baby clothes instead, so he tried to do the right thing and moved her in with him. Also, she's not actually allergic to cats, she just hates them. She also was very aware he was married, and has been to the house multiple times. He admitted he had cheated on her before their son had been born, while she was pregnant, but that she didn't tell him she knew until after she had moved out with their son. He said he was still texting her every day, not just about their son, but also about possibly working things out. He wants her back, but she seems to be head over heels for my husband, just like I was. I told him good luck, but yeah, not the direction I'm going in at all. This time he made his bed, and he will lay in it for good. Our chances of reconciliation are 0. I've never accepted someone back into my life after a betrayal, and it won't start now. At first I wanted to make sure the divorce was going to be short and as simple as possible, even if it meant giving up some things, but after that conversation, I've decided I'm fighting tooth and nail for everything I can possibly get. I live in a no-fault divorce state, but my state does have special laws for adultery, can still sue for it here, and the divorce attorney I've consulted says it looks pretty good that I won't have to pay him alimony. He also told me to look into every single banking transaction in my accounts, as he did not think they got an apartment on his income without some extra cushion, aka my money, and he was right. Last year my ex-husband told me he got really into stock trading, and if he could invest some of my money as well. Guess who was never doing any stock trading, and the screenshots he showed me were all fake and pulled from somewhere else, and he had been sending that money to his girlfriend, or saving it for their new place. I've been pretty enraged since finding that out. He asked his adoptive parents to ask me to allow him visitation rights to see the cats, after he had to give them back once he realized his new girlfriend is allergic to them. I relayed that he needs to first run me my frickin' money and then take it up with the judge. I didn't think visitation was a real thing for pets, but according to my lawyer it very much is. I officially filed for divorce yesterday, and he emailed me quite the colourful email about how selfish and bitter I am for not putting my pride aside and being so fast to file for divorce and refusing to let him stop by the house to see the cats that now he's accusing me of cheating. I read somewhere that you never really know someone until you're divorcing them, and I can truly confirm that is true. I felt like you guys deserved some sort of update, considering how much support I was given. I can't share more details for now, but really, thank you all again. Wow, okay folks, that's the end of that story. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Honestly, it baffles me how often people like Opie's partner just double down and refuse to admit that they're in the wrong. Like this guy's been an awful person and has done everything wrong, and yet he still feels like he has some sort of argument to make. It's just insane. Anyway, let's go to our next story. Okay, this next one was posted on Relationship Advice as well. It was written by a throwaway account, and it's titled, "My brother-in-law's ex lost her baby. I've never seen my husband so upset." Good morning everyone. I'm 34 female, my husband is 37 male. He has a brother, Brendan, 33 male, who had been dating Kyra, 26 female, for the last 3 years. 5 months ago, Kyra and Brendan announced to close family and friends Kyra was expecting. Everyone was very excited for them. My husband has never been very close to his brother, but was definitely very excited for this child, which did surprise me, because he didn't show this much excitement or eagerness to go to the doctor's appointments when I was pregnant with our children. 2 months ago, Kyra and Brendan separated. It happened really suddenly due to infidelity on Brendan's part. Brendan did not take the breakup well at all, and very much wants to get back together with Kyra, but she's hesitant. Last week, Kyra lost the baby. It was very sudden and tragic, and the entire family is devastated, but the news hit my husband harder than I thought it would. He's been distant, withdrawn, and irritable all week. I don't want to discredit his sadness or grief, because I know he did lose a niece, and the way it happened was very tragic. I've already told him I'm here if he wants to talk, asked if there's anything I can do, etc., and I get met with irritability or anger, like this is my fault somehow, like I've turned into the enemy, and I've never seen him like this before. What is a kind, non-judgmental way I can try to speak to him about this again? Something seems strangely off here for me. Let's look at the comments. Reach out to Kyra and offer your condolences. She's broken up with his brother, so she probably won't tell him. If your husband asks why you reached out, then you'll know they are communicating. If I were you, OP, I would really question if Brendan was the unfaithful one in his relationship with Kyra. I find it suspicious of your husband being way more excited and eager about Kyra's pregnancy than yours, since, as you pointed out, he wasn't excited or eager when you were pregnant. From what you've written here, suggests that your husband has an infatuation with Kyra, and that the baby was actually his, or that he saw the niece as a way to rebuild his relationship with Brendan. I've clearly been reading too much Reddit, because if I were you I'd be questioning if it was actually your brother-in-law who was the unfaithful one. Not sure how to approach this with your husband, to be honest, because there's clearly something sketchy going on in some form. Yeah, it's more along the lines of what I was thinking too. Maybe I've been reading too much Reddit as well. God knows that's true. let's go to the update. Hello everyone. To get this out of the way immediately, no, the baby was not my husband's. I spoke to a grief counsellor who gave me some ideas of how to talk about it with my husband and how to approach it. That night the kids were over at a friend's house, so it was just the two of us. I made him his favourite dinner and we sat down and talked. I found out that the loss of the baby was hitting him so hard for two reasons. His brother had told him the day before the miscarriage happened they were planning on naming the baby after his mother, who passed while he was very young, as a surprise for my father-in-law. The second reason is because the night my brother-in-law cheated on Kyra, he was supposed to be hanging out with my husband because Kyra was out of town. My husband was particularly tired from work that day and cancelled, so Brendan ended up going to a bar and meeting the woman he cheated on Kyra there. My husband thinks that if he'd hung out with Brendan that day, he never would have gone to the bar and cheated, and the breakup wouldn't have happened. Kyra wouldn't have gotten so stressed out and lost the baby, and this is my husband's logic. I'm very happy we were able to talk it through. He's beginning the process to begin speaking to a professional, but he did say that once we talked it out in a constructive way, he began to feel better. Alrighty folks, that's the end of that one. There's always a logical explanation to these things. I feel like Reddit comments, and myself to an extent as well, have a habit of jumping to bad conclusions. And I think we learned here that that's not always the case. I lied about who my baby daddy is. Do I tell him the truth now? I, 26 female, grew up in the Midwest but went to college in California. There I met and dated Jeff, 26 male, for our final 2 years of undergraduate. After graduation, I stayed in California to get my master's degree while Jeff entered the workforce. We were happy together and we planned to get married after I got my master's. After I finished my schooling, Jeff got cold feet about getting married and eventually becoming a father, abandonment issues from his biological dad leaving, so he broke up with me. Heartbroken feels like it would barely scratch the surface on how I felt. I had a great job in California, so I stayed in hopes that Jeff would come to his senses and would get back together. We never did. He met Grace, 25 female, and started dating her about 5 months after we broke up. I started planning on moving back to my home state once I realized it was actually over. Then he and Grace broke up at the beginning of this year. Jeff and I ended up sleeping together a few times while they were broken up. It was a very public breakup, no cheating involved. About a week after the last time we had sex, he told me that he and Grace were getting back together. He said he couldn't remain friends with me because he still had feelings for me and he had to let them fade to be fair to Grace. His final words to me were to not call him unless I was literally dying and just wanting to say goodbye. I left California behind 3 weeks later. 2 weeks after I'd returned home, I found out that I was pregnant. It's Jeff's. I wasn't going to be that girl that uses a pregnancy to get a man back, so I deleted all my social media accounts and made new ones that don't have my name attached to them. The only Cali people I added were trusted friends who I knew either had no connection to Jeff or who were loyal to me and wouldn't tell him my new accounts. Early in my pregnancy, I made the mistake of checking out Jeff and Grace's respective profiles and saw that they refer to each other as love of my life, and Jeff even had a picture of them captioned saying he was going to marry that girl. That broke me all over again, and I've since blocked them both and decided I have to move on with my life. I am now 6.5 months pregnant. Since moving back, I've bought my own house in my home state and I've been busy building a nursery for my baby. I already love this little baby in my belly, and I feel 100% confident that I can raise and provide for him on my own, with minor help from my family. One of my best friends back in California was having an engagement party. I won't be able to attend the wedding as I'll be busy with a newborn when it happens, so I decided to fly out to see my friends and offer my congratulations to the couple before my life becomes baby-centric. I got into town on Thursday and honestly had a blast seeing all my friends yesterday, even though it's only been about 6 months since I last saw them. They were all respectful of my wishes not to take pictures of me below the chest. They did post some pictures of me online, but from angles it just looked like I'd gained some weight in my face, nothing that would give away my pregnancy. It's a couple days before my flight back home, and the friend that I'm staying with suggested we go to the store because she wanted to get a scrapbook for our engaged friend. She went to the store, and as we were getting ready to leave, I saw Jeff's cousin Tanya, 22-ish, walk in. I'd talked to her several times at Jeff's family gatherings over the years, but we never really got along. She was always a bit too gossipy for me to like her, so of course she was the last person I wanted to see. The first thing she did was loudly announce that I was pregnant, as if everyone in the store couldn't tell just by looking at me. Then she starts grilling me, asking if Jeff knows. I said no, and that he doesn't need to know as it's not his. That was a lie, obviously, but I didn't want to open a can of worms. Tanya then tells me with how big my belly is that I'm far along, and asked how could I move on so quickly. I told her that Jeff and I broke up a long time ago. She responded saying that everyone knows we were still hooking up at the beginning of this year. I did not know that was common knowledge. I figured Jeff would have kept his mouth shut about that. Anyway, I lied and told her that I already had a new boyfriend and that I was 5 months pregnant. She seemed to accept that and awkwardly congratulated me. My friend and I paid for her stuff and left immediately after that. I prayed that would be the end of it. Like I said, Tanya is a gossip, so of course she went and ran her mouth about seeing me pregnant just a few hours later. Now a bunch of my friends have messaged me, saying that Jeff is blowing up their inboxes trying to reach me. None of them have told him my new number or social media, so he has no way of reaching me himself. My flight back home isn't for another 2 days, and I'm freaking out. Some of my friends are saying that I should just tell him the truth, now that he knows I'm pregnant. I still say I can get by pretending it's someone else's, and that I'm not far enough along for it to be his. I honestly just want to ignore him and go back home. However, I'm having some doubts that that's the right choice, and there isn't a consensus on what to do, so I'm turning to internet strangers. Now for some comments. Unless you specifically don't want him in your life for your sake, you should tell him the truth. I need to move on, so please don't contact me unless you're on deathbed. Also includes, or it turns out you're pregnant, as an asterisk. OP replies, I don't want him in my life, but it's not like a safety issue or anything. He was never abusive in any way. I've just moved very far away, and I don't plan on coming back, so why even start that discussion when there's no positive outcome, is where my mind is at, I guess. The commenter adds, because one day your kid might decide they want to get to know their biological father, and then he will find out, and then he'll realise that you decided to take away any chance for him to get to know the kid growing up. Your kid will also realise that you took away any chance for them to know their biological father while growing up. Yes, it's obviously a very difficult situation. He still deserves to know. You can emphasise to him that you're structuring your life based on the assumption that he won't be involved in the kid's life. OP replies, obviously that conversation would be years away, but I never planned on hiding anything from my child. I don't know exactly what I would say, but I'd be honest that his father didn't abandon him. I like that last sentence. That's a very good way to phrase it. Thank you for that. Another comment says, he doesn't sound like a dirtbag. That would be the only reason not to tell him. You both handled the breakup like adults. Maybe trust yourselves to do that again. The baby will not be hurt by more love. OP replies, I think he'd be a great father, but I just don't see how it would realistically work with co-parenting. I'm not renting, I bought a house. My life is back home, and his life is here. Although even with that as a legitimate concern, maybe I'm just really wanting to avoid having to have the conversation with him. Yeah, I think the general consensus in the comments is that OP should tell him, and OP kind of knows that she should, but she's kind of just delaying the inevitable here. Let's go to the update. Hi everyone. So the consensus on my post was to tell Jeff about the baby being his. Even from just the first few comments that seemed clear. We did end up meeting up. It wasn't particularly interesting or dramatic, but if anyone cares, here's what's happened. He got a hold of the friend I was staying with on Instagram. I wanted to just talk to him on the phone, but he insisted we talk in person ASAP. In retrospect, I should have just waited until the next day, but I kind of just wanted to get it over with, and it seemed like he did too. To be honest, I thought he was going to tell me that he wanted nothing to do with the kid, because I didn't see any other reason why he wanted to talk in person right that second. Keep in mind it was almost 10 at night at the time. So my friend and I went to his parents' house where he was waiting. His parents always treated me like family, so I guess I felt comfortable being there, even though we probably should have met at a neutral location. When we got there, Jeff's mum answered the door. She hugged me and I could tell she wanted to touch my stomach, but she restrained herself and didn't even ask, thankfully. I always liked her. We made awkward small talk as she led me to the living room. It was clear that they'd just had a party, as it was still messy with a bunch of drinking cups lying around and confetti on the floor. On the couch was Jeff and Grace holding each other's hands. I was surprised that I honestly felt nothing for him at first. His stepdad offered me a seat, but I chose to stand. I wasn't planning on being there long anyway. Jeff started off saying that I might be able to fool Tanya, but he knows there's no way I would have ever met a new guy and gotten pregnant that fast. So he asked why I didn't tell him. I told him the truth, that the last time we spoke he told me not to contact him unless I was literally dying, and I'm not dying. He told me that he was trying to be respectful to Grace, and that obviously this would have been an exception. Grace chimed in to tell me that I ruined her proposal. I found out later, third-hand info, but knowing Tanya I believe it, that the party at his parents' house was for him to propose to Grace in front of all their friends and family. Tanya waited until after the proposal, and when people were giving speeches, she told Jeff she was so glad he got away from me and wasn't going to be stuck raising my baby. Then all hell broke loose at the party apparently. I had no idea that happened at the time, or I honestly would not have went to see him at all, but hearing that he proposed was when it hurt. He broke up with me because he was scared of marriage and kids, but he dated her not even half as long as we did, and she got a ring. I put on a brave face, or at least I think I did, and acted like it didn't bother me, but it absolutely did. His mum told Grace that it's not my fault, and now wasn't the time for that. Then Jeff told me that obviously I can't move now. I told him that I already did, and I was only in California for the weekend. He countered, saying that I have to move back. I told him no, I'm not doing that. He said, well, I can't just leave, and at that point I got frustrated and told him that I left months ago. My job is in my home state. I bought a house. All my doctor's appointments have been there. I established residency there a long time ago. California isn't my home anymore and hasn't been for half a year now. So then he got frustrated and got up to approach me, asking if he's just supposed to send a paycheck once a month and saying this wasn't how it was supposed to happen. I don't really know what he meant by that second part, because he just found out I was pregnant a few hours before, but I assumed he was talking about his life plans. I forced myself to calm down and try to be empathetic. I told him that if he was worried about this screwing up his plans for the future, that he had nothing to worry about. I don't want or need anything from him. I've planned everything out from finances to childcare when I return to work, to even setting up my baby's college fund. It's all taken care of already. He didn't really say anything. I didn't know if he was thinking or just relieved that I had it all handled. I told him he could still get married to Grace and have his own family someday. I promised I wouldn't bother or blame him for anything. My baby will be loved and cared for. Jeff got teary-eyed and told me that I know how he feels about this. He was referring to when he broke up with me and said that he didn't want to be a dad because he didn't think he'd be a good one. He also has abandonment issues from his biological dad walking out on him, his siblings, and his mum when he was 6. I told Jeff that he's not his dad, that he's better than him and always will be. His mum started crying at this point, I guess, from seeing how his dad's abandonment still affects him to this day. I promised Jeff that I wouldn't let my baby think that Jeff was a deadbeat. I'd be honest that we just weren't meant to be together, and we lived thousands of miles apart. He told me that he can't just not be in his kid's life, and that I don't understand what it could do to them. He asked if we could please just figure something out together. I asked him what did he realistically expect would be a solution, because I'm not moving back to California, and I highly doubt he and Grace wanted to pack their bags and move that far away from their own families and friends. I said I'm not going to be sending my kid on a plane every few months either, because that's too much. Jeff didn't say anything to that, so I told him maybe that could be an option when he's older and has more independence, but right now it's not happening. Jeff's eyes lit up and he asked, "It's a boy?" I'd been careful not to reveal the gender up until then, but I messed up there. I nodded and he nervously asked if he could feel the baby. Before I could even respond, Grace let out this loud wail and stormed off to the kitchen. Jeff apologized to me and then went to go comfort her. His mum excused herself as well as she was still crying, so she left and her husband followed her. That left me and my friend awkwardly standing alone in the living room. All we hear is his mum sniffling in the hallway and Grace sobbing while talking to Jeff in the kitchen. It was so incredibly uncomfortable, and I know many will hate me for this, but I just felt overwhelmed by this whole thing. Maybe it makes me pathetic, but having to stand in the room where a party was just held to celebrate Jeff proposing to another woman hurt so damn bad. So I left. I told my friend, let's get the hell out of there, and we quietly walked out. We ended up staying in a hotel, and I was able to get an earlier flight home on Sunday. Now I'm back home and putting my focus back on the nursery. I told my friends that I had talked to Jeff, and I apologized if he still tried to reach me through them. I advised them to block him if it's too much. I know this isn't the end of things. I'm planning on reaching out to him again eventually. Even if he broke my heart, I still care about him, and I won't deny him a relationship with this kid if that's what he really wants. I have no idea how it's going to work, and I'm only allowed to update once, so I apologize that I won't be able to tell anyone who cares how it all turns out. Thank you for the advice on my last post. Even though everyone was downvoting me, and the post itself, it was nice to get opinions without bias. Okay, on to the next update. I'm a little surprised to be writing this. I thought my update post was one and done, but I guess it got reposted on another sub yesterday and gained traction, so there's a bunch of people who have requested another update. I wasn't aware that people could make posts on their own profile either, so I feel dumb for thinking that I could only update once, but here we are. I greatly appreciate the newer comments supporting me. The few comments I got from the relationship advice sub were all in support of Jeff, and downvoting everything I commented. I felt like I was crowned the queen of hell over there, to be honest. I haven't replied to any of the new comments because while most of you just read about the incident yesterday, for me it was 2 weeks ago. My hormones are all over the place due to my pregnancy, but thankfully I'm past the headspace I was in that day and when I first returned home. I do appreciate all the well wishes for me and my baby though. Before I give an update, I wanted to clear a few things up. First, I've seen a lot of comments saying that Jeff proposed to Grace within a few months after they started dating. That's not true. Aside from the 1-month breakup where Jeff and I conceived the baby, they were together roughly a year and a half before the engagement, assuming they had no more breakups after. I don't know their full history, nor do I care to. Second, I feel like people were being a bit harsh on Jeff. I can honestly say he's not an abusive or controlling person. The man never so much as raised his voice at me in the 4 years we dated. He was a bit overbearing by demanding that I had to stay in California because that's where he is, but he just found out about the baby and was panicking that I'd disappear and he wouldn't be able to contact me. Which, to be fair, that's exactly what I did, so I get it. I had a million thoughts, some wildly ridiculous when I think about it now, running through my own head when I found out too. Third, he wasn't juggling Grace and I at the same time like people think. She broke up with him. They both thought for good at the time. He and I started having sex again, but it wasn't like we were in a sequel of the lovey-dovey honeymoon phase. It was a weird and confusing time. We weren't talking about getting back together. I already had a start date for my new job back home, and my move was scheduled. He didn't know any of that. I was still in love with him, of course, and I'd hoped he'd tell me he wanted to get back together, and I would have stayed, but he didn't. Finding out he was getting back with Grace hurt, but I can't say I felt used for sex. I don't think either of us knew what the hell we were doing by sleeping together again in the first place. Jeff is a simple man overall. I promise he's not some supervillain taking advantage of women and playing with their emotions. I'm not making excuses for him. I wish it were that easy to say he's a dirtbag and you should give me all your sympathy. In reality, I know who Jeff is as a person. Anyone who reads my posts knows him as just a collection of bad and or questionable choices he made. If you summarize anyone up to just the bad crap they've done, of course they'd come off as an unlikable person. Jeff's not evil or manipulative. He's just got some stuff he probably should have worked through years ago, and admittedly I never thought his issues were that prevalent until we broke up. Plus I'm positive that Grace knew we slept together while they were broken up. There's no way that was a shock to her. He would have told her himself, and even if he somehow hadn't, if Tanya knew then everyone else knew shortly after, guaranteed. Lastly, I appreciate everyone concerned about any custody issues that may arise from this. I was also amused by the people who were hyping themselves up, thinking that I was delusional and actually going to be forced to put my baby on a plane by court order. I'm not sure why so many people on Reddit are used to dysfunctional relationships where judges and a huge custody battle need to be involved, but that's not us. Jeff and I were together and very much in love for years. It might be hard to picture that when you've only read about the crappy end of our relationship, but everything before the breakup was an ideal relationship which is exactly why it hurt me so much when he ended it. Things are weird now, but we don't hate each other. Our default option, even in a complicated situation like this, is not we're taking this to court. That would be the last resort. I'm sure we'll work it out between ourselves long before it ever gets there. So, on to the actual update. I planned on contacting Jeff after a couple of weeks. I wanted to take time to gather my own thoughts and figure out what I wanted to say. Instead, I got phone calls from his number about a week after I returned home. He left a voicemail asking me to call him so we could talk. I was honestly furious because there's no way he should have been able to find my number unless somebody told him. It might not seem like a big deal, but to me I saw it as there being somebody who betrayed my trust in them. I texted him asking how he got my number. He said it wasn't important and that he wanted to talk. I said it is important to me, but he still didn't want to tell me. I told him we can talk when he tells me who he got my number from, so finally he told me who it was and sent a screenshot of the conversation when I asked for proof. It was the second least likely friend I would have expected to break my trust. That's a whole other story though. So we talked over FaceTime, and he told me that he absolutely wants to be in our son's life. He doesn't know how it's going to work long term, and neither do I. There was no threat of lawyers or his mum shouting grandparents' rights in the background like people were expecting. We're adults and we'll figure it out. The situation is not any easier to handle logistically, but emotions from that night have died down, and we have clearer heads to move forward with. He did, however, have the audacity to tell me that he hates that I didn't tell him much sooner, and that I wasn't planning to tell him at all until Tanya found out, because he thought we meant more to each other than that. I told him I thought we did too until he told me not to contact him unless I was dying. That shut him up quickly, because he knows now that it was an extreme and unnecessary thing to say, even if he wanted to cut contact with me. He's apologised for it, and I apologised for not telling him about the baby myself. That's all we can really do. We're about to co-parent a child together, so we don't get the luxury of holding a grudge with one another over past slights. He also told me that he and Grace are no longer together. He claims that it was a mutual decision, but that sounds too easy to me. How do you go from newly engaged to broken up in 18 hours with it being a completely clean process? I'm guessing he's just sparing me the ugly details on what must have actually happened. I do feel bad for Grace. Other than incorrectly assigning blame for her ruined engagement party, she didn't do anything wrong. I don't know her personally, but her proposal night should have been one of the best nights of her life, and it was ruined. I wouldn't want that for any woman. And because I know what everyone is going to say, no, I am not seeing this as an opportunity to get back together with Jeff. Honestly, my focus is on my son right now. I'm not thinking about jumping into a relationship with anyone, much less the man who broke my heart once already. I think Jeff and I need to figure out how we're going to co-parent first and foremost. And to be honest, I want a man who loves me and chooses me for the person that I am, not because I happen to have given birth to his child. Plus, I don't know that I could ever get over the fact that he proposed to Grace over me. Even if they broke off their engagement, I still want to know why she got a ring, and I didn't. I'm going to ask eventually, but I don't think any answer will ever make it okay to me. A lot of people said it wasn't that he didn't want marriage, he just didn't want it with me. I find that hard to believe because, as I said above, we really had an ideal relationship. Our breakup wasn't a build-up of issues. It really was as simple as, you want marriage and kids, I don't. Which I think most would agree is just the natural end of a relationship. If it really is as simple as I just wasn't the one, then I want him to look me in the eyes and tell me that himself. Jeff is a terrible liar, even when he's lying for a good reason like a special surprise. He fidgets his fingers and can't maintain eye contact when he's lying. So if he looks me in the eyes and tells me his reason for why he chose to marry her and not me, I'll know if he's being honest. Jeff also told me that his mum wanted to send me stuff for the baby, so he asked for my address. I declined. I'm positive that there are no nefarious reasons and she's just excited and wants to help. This will be her first grandchild. However, I still feel a little uncomfortable giving them my home address. He's been texting me every day and calls me every night to say goodnight. Sometimes he wants to talk to the baby. It's a bit confusing for me because he broke up with me because he didn't want a kid, but now he wants to be involved to the point where he's going out of his way to contact me and ask if I need anything. It's strange and I don't really understand how his brain works, but like I said in my last post, I won't deny him a relationship with his kid if he wants one. Jeff wants to visit me in person to talk properly, but I told him I'm not sure if that's necessary right now. He asked to come last weekend and I said no. Then he asked again about possibly coming this weekend, but I told him I can't because I'm having my baby shower on Saturday. He wants to come. I'm not sure if that's a great idea. I'm not worried that he would say or do anything bad, and we're getting along over text and voice chat. I can tell that he just wants to be involved, but part of me feels like it's sort of, I don't know, playing house almost. I guess it wouldn't be a big deal if I made it clear he would be here as a friend and the father of the baby, but not as anything more. My parents don't think it's a good idea, but I know that's just because they don't like Jeff ever since he broke up with me. My sister, who is more level-headed, says that it could be a show of good faith that I'm serious about having a healthy co-parenting relationship, and it'll probably be easier to build that foundation now before the baby comes. My brothers don't care either way, but they say they're ready to beat up Jeff if he does or says anything stupid. He won't, but I love my brothers for always looking out for me. I'm not sure what I'm going to decide, but I know Jeff needs an answer soon, so we can book a flight and a hotel room if I do say yes. I'm open to suggestions. Alrighty folks, that's about it for that one. Any suggestions for OP? Let me know down below. Either way, that was quite a unique story. I quite enjoyed reading that one. Let me know your thoughts too. Okay, that's it from me today. Hope you guys enjoyed that story. Thanks for making it to the end, and I'll see you folks in the next video. Bye.